Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our cash flow inflow series. So in this series of sessions, we're looking at ways in which you can use cash flow modeling to facilitate conversations with clients and make clients engage, or help clients engage rather, with some of the difficult financial decisions they have to make and help them think about things in more detail. Now, in today's session, we're going to be talking about retirement, and retirement is probably one area where all of you who use cash flow modeling are already using cash flow modeling. But are you helping clients in the best way that you can help clients? Are you helping them to engage with what their retirement might look like? So clients might have preconceptions, they might have misconceptions about what they actually need in retirement. They might never really have thought about what they want their retirement to look like. They might know that they want to retire, they don't want to be working anymore, but they might not know what they actually want to do if they have, borrow from Josh Button, it's a great turn of phrase, but if they had 7 Sundays a week, if they didn't have to get up and go to work, if they could play golf every day or go on holiday 12 times a year, would they do that? But in essence, clients have never retired before. They might have some experience of what their parents' retirement or what friends' retirements have looked like, but they've not retired before, whereas you have dealt with countless retirees. So your experience is really going to come to the fore. So clients, especially clients who've never had financial advice before, might have seen things like, the Which Guide for Retirement, how much you need for a comfortable retirement. I went on Hargreaves Lansdown's website. They say that, they've got their kind of pension estimators, and they say that most people, it's a great quote, most people need a retirement income that's 2/3 of their salary. I don't know where that comes from. 2/3 of their salary is a 33% reduction in outgoings, I suppose. Where does this come from? And I think the key thing to think about when we're talking about retirement and what retirement might look like for clients, and helping clients visualize and engage with their retirement, is that every client is different. Every client is significantly different. Especially in the kind of modern world where we have blended families, we might have people who have kids much later. We might have people who have, in their 50s, 60s, approaching retirement, still have kids in primary school, secondary school. They might have grandkids who they're contributing to their education expenses. They might have wedding costs coming up. They might be running a portfolio of properties. They might still be early years of their mortgage. We can't make these kind of blanket assumptions about what retirement might look like, because it's going to differ significantly for every client. However, there are going to be trends that we can help clients isolate. And fundamentally, I mean, this is the key thing. Retirement and spending is the best way in which we can help clients engage with the process of cash flow modeling and understand the value of cash flow modeling, and why they need to provide us with the really detailed fact-find information that we're asking them for. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. Okay, so this is my client, Rob and Kate. Rob and Kate are relatively simple, and I'm not going to kind of go to town in terms of showing you the details of their cash flow, their assets, their income, their expenditure. What I'm going to focus on in this session is expenditure. Just what their outgoings are, what their future might look like, how things are potentially going to change, and how that affects their cash flow, and how it helps us talk to them and engage them with the conversation about what their futures might look like, and how we can use that to help them be more forthcoming with the information they provide us as part of the fact-finding process. So if we just have a quick look at their expenditure, what I've done is I've very much modeled this on the Hargreaves Lansdown philosophy of your expenditure is going to drop by 33% when you retire overnight. And the less detail we capture about clients' expenditure, the harder it is to get them to spot where the problems are with this. So you can capture as much or as little detail as you want about client spending. You could just say, here's your overall spending. And this client, they have about 80K's worth of tax, 160K's worth of expenditure. We could just put in one figure here. It's part of their fact find. We could just say you're spending £80,000 a year. When you retire, that's going to drop by a third. It's going to drop to about £52,000. And we could leave it at that. So we could just have one figure, which changes overnight at retirement and stays at that level forever. The danger is we don't know whether that's more than they're really going to spend. We don't know if that's less than they're going to spend. In this case, it's probably going to be significantly less. But what I've done is just to try and establish how we can kind of help clients engage with these conversations. What I've done is I've broken it down into a couple of headings. Here's your housekeeping costs. Here's your personal expenditure, some gifts that you're making to the kids. Here's what you're spending on holidays. Here's what you're spending on the kids or grandchildren in this case. And actually, this client's paying for their grandchildren's school fees, university fees, and that's going to stop in a few years' time. And there's your mortgage costs. And what I've assumed here is that everything is just going to change overnight at retirement. So this client's 60, 61. They're going to retire in 4 or 5 years' time at age 65. And you can see from this chart down the bottom, which looks at their expenditure year by year, that everything's just going to change overnight. So at 65, the mortgage disappears, the school fees disappear. And obviously, if we just have one figure of £80,000, we could just say 80,000, 50,000, not bother about what's changing or where things are changing. But the key thing here is how that affects their cash flow position. And if I just show you their cash flow, and again, this is just the way we handle these things in truth. Every cash flow system has a way of dealing with all of these conversations, a way of facilitating all of these conversations. And the key thing that I want to take away from these sessions is getting that balance. It's not about how you do it in truth or whatever tool you might use. It's about how you use the tool that you use to engage clients with these conversations and help them understand the reason why we need this, kind of additional information about their spending. So client retires in a few years' time, they get some tax-free cash from pensions, their expenditure is decreased and their cash flow looks lovely. So this is their capital chart, their cash flow capital chart in truth, which shows their liquid capital projected forward for the rest of their lives. They've currently got a little bit of liquid capital, it goes up and then it continues to go up forever. But this is on the basis that all of these statements we've made about their expenditure are correct. Now, is their expenditure actually going to reduce by a third overnight when they retire? Or is it actually going to look a bit different to that? Now, the other danger, the kind of other side of that coin is that just as well as understating expenditure, it's really easy to overstate expenditure. Now, when we start talking to clients about retirement, we start saying to them, what do you want to do? What they want to do might not necessarily tally up with what they can afford to do. So if we said to them, okay, what are you spending on holidays? How much would you potentially like to spend on holidays in retirement? Now, this client's spending £850 a month on holidays. How much do they want to spend on holidays in retirement? Well, they want to spend £2,000. Of course they do. They want to spend loads of money on holidays in retirement. Or, this client, they're driving company cars. What kind of cars do they want to be driving when they retire? They want to spend £10,000 a year on cars. Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Their personal expenses, will their personal expenses go up in retirement? Will there be some point later on where these things might stop? So, here I've got my client spending more money on cars in retirement, but actually there's going to be a point later on where that might stop. And that's something that we'll look at in more detail very shortly. But just like we have the danger of understating expenditure, we have the danger of overstating expenditure. And as well as understanding that retirement might not look as simple as everything just reducing or stopping or changing overnight, we also have to get clients to understand that their pension fund isn't infinite. Their capital reserves aren't infinite. Just because they want to do something, they might not be able to afford to do something. And again, cash flow modeling is a tool that helps us to engage clients with those kind of conversations. And if we say to them, what do you want to spend on holidays? And they say £2,000 a month or £20,000 a year or £40,000 a year, we can show them a cash flow that says, okay, you can do that for 4 years. And then your pension fund's gone. And for the rest of your retirement, you're living on your state pensions. And you might spend a week in a caravan park or whatever it might be. Apologies, no judgment if you love spending weeks in caravan parks. I grew up with caravan holidays and love them personally, but there we go. So fundamentally, the point is that just as there is a danger of understating expenditure, there's a parallel danger of overstating expenditure. So where before we had our cash flow, which kind of ever trended upwards, now we have a cash flow that ever trends downwards, where the client runs out of liquid capital at some point in their early 80s. And this may well be the case. This may be what their cash flow actually looks like. But until we can get them to engage with those conversations about what their retirement is actually going to look like, we can't possibly understand. So if we just go back to the expenditure, what I've done for this client is I've broken things down in a bit more detail. And how much detail you choose to go into is entirely up to you. It's entirely up to what works best for you and your clients. Now, what we find is that there is a tipping point. There's a sweet spot for, and it will vary by client or advisor by advisor or firm by firm. But we find that clients engage much better with the model when they get to the stage where they can recognize themselves in the model. So when they stop saying this is a couple in their late 50s or early 60s or 40s or whatever it might be, and they start to say, okay, this is us. Oh, this is where we do X, or this is where we do Y. So for this client, what I've done, I've just broken things down in a bit more detail. And the reason why I do this, and the reason why we recommend doing this, is because it helps clients engage with those conversations. And we say to them, okay, you are currently eating out quite a bit. Is there a point in the future where you might eat out less? You're currently going on lovely holidays. Is there a point in the future you might go on fewer holidays? Is there a point in the future where, if I said to you, I'm going to pay for a round the world trip for you, that you'd say, actually, no, it's probably a bit much for me when you're 85 or 90. When's that point going to arrive? Or if we said to them, would you like to give more money to charities, to your favorite charity, or would you like to lavish more money on the grandkids? Or are there certain things that you don't want to do that you're currently doing? It's much easier to have those conversations when we're looking item by item rather than saying, you're currently spending £80,000. What do you want to spend in retirement? Which is an almost impossible question to ask. So for this client, what I've got various different things going on. And rather than the mortgage just stopping overnight, we've got the mortgage stopping when the mortgage stops. And that might be before retirement, it might be after retirement. Rather than school fees stopping overnight at retirement, their oldest grandchild leaves university this year, and then the next one, and then the youngest one's 3 years younger. So there's 3 years of one load of university fees. This client's buying a holiday home when they retire. There's a one-off cost for buying a holiday home. Rather than assuming that they are spending £10,000 a year on cars in retirement, we're assuming they're buying a new car when they retire and then replacing it every few years. And then actually there's going to be a point in later life when they stop spending loads of money on cars. But at that point, other things change as well. So their personal expenses, the stuff they're spending on the core stuff within the house, that might go up. Similarly, kind of their housekeeping expenses might reduce, or their discretionary spending might reduce. They might stop going on those lavish holidays because they might not want to anymore. But actually, some of their costs might increase, so their costs for servicing. So this might be getting someone to mow the lawn, which they've done their entire lives, but there might be a point in their 80s where they don't want to do that, or 90s, or whenever it might be, or they might want to do it forever, in which case we allow them to do it forever. But we can talk to clients about these things, and we can say to them, okay, you're currently driving a company car. When you retire, what do you want to drive? Would you want to then replace that car? How often would you like to replace it? At what point would you stop driving? Do you want to give the kids some money when they want to get on the property ladder, or grandkids, or whoever it might be? Do you want to make gifts to your favorite charities? At what point do you want to do that? Do you want to do some trust work? At what point do you want to do that? At one point you are going to be making these significant contributions into a trust or whatever it might be. And what that allows us to do is to really kind of drill down into what clients want their retirement to look like and why. And it may be, a smile pattern of retirement where it's high early on and high later on, and there's kind of a plateau period in the middle. But I don't think there's any rules of thumb necessarily. I don't think we can say that your expenditure is going to drop by 33%. It may increase, it may decrease. There may be certain costs that go up, there may be certain costs that go down at different points in their lives. But we find that clients really start to engage with the process when they can start to see themselves reflected on their cash flows. So when we look at the simple cash flows that we looked at before, we have understated expenditure, very linear, overstated expenditure, again, very linear. If we look at the final scenario that I've looked at here, this kind of just right scenario, we can start to see peaks and troughs. And again, it's not overly complicated. I've not gone too detailed here, but we can see when there's things like weddings, or when there's things like car replacements in retirement. We can see kind of peaks and troughs here. Or if they, let's say they had their DB pension, which is paying out benefits 2 years after their DC pension funds, we'd see a second peak here. Or let's say, for example, they were planning on selling their business or downsizing their home, whatever it might be. We'd see different peaks and troughs. And everything that's planned should form part of their cash flow. And it helps the client say, okay, this is the year when we're assuming that Jenny gets married. This is the year when we're buying that nice car that Michael's always wanted, or we're going on the round the world cruise, or whatever it might be. And that's the point where they really start to engage and realize the value of giving you this information. And especially when you show them something like this. So if I just compare this to the situation we were in before, where we'd understated their expenditure, made those Hargreaves Lansdown style, no offense to Hargreaves Lansdown, apologies, those kind of blanket assumptions about reducing expenditure, we can just see the impact of that. So the difference between understating their expenditure and the danger of potentially understating their expenditure, and conversely, the danger of overstating their expenditure. So we've just bought them an extra 6-7 years worth of solvency in retirement. Again, apologies for those who aren't kind of indoctrinated with an understanding of Truth's cash flow, but this is their liquidity position projected forwards. And we can see here, according to the assumptions we've made, really detailed assumptions about what their retirement might actually look like, they've got enough capital currently to see them through to age 88. And there's 1,000,001 solutions we can look at here. So we can look at reducing expenditure, for example. We can look at increasing investment return. And again, the way in which you achieve this might differ depending on what cash flow software you use. But in truth, we can just use these tools on the left-hand side. So we can say how much more return do they need on their pension funds, for example, to prevent their cash flow running out or going below a certain point. But one really simple solution we can look at is something like downsizing. It could be downsizing, it could be equity release, it could be selling the business. But in order to help clients understand how we can facilitate all of this desired retirement lifestyle. And what we have in truth is we have these things called key dates that we can move around. And I can just drag this onto my chart here. So I could say, what if you were to downsize? What if you were to release 25% of the equity that's currently in your family home at some point in your 80s? And we can see that that's going to facilitate your desired retirement lifestyle for the rest of your lives. And actually you end up with about £170,000 worth of capital at the end of things. But the key point, again, it's not how you achieve this with the tools that you've got, it's how you use the tools that you've got to engage clients with these conversations about what their financial futures might look like. And you don't have to end up with 50 different items of expenditure that itemize exactly what's going on. And this is the sale and purchase of our downsized property, by the way. You don't have to have 100 lines of expenditure or 50 lines of expenditure. It could be 2, it could be 3. It could just be broad strokes categories that help you engage clients with those conversations and help them arrive at a cash flow that speaks to them and says to them, this is your cash flow. It's not a generic cash flow for any couple in a similar situation to you. It's your cash flow. This is how your financial futures might look. And that's just about it for today. So in the next session, we're going to be talking about long-term care, which is an interesting kind of spin on talking about retirement and how we get clients to engage with conversations about long-term care, and if cash flow modeling can help us facilitate that. So thanks all for joining me today, and see you all again tomorrow.